All right, so what does horizontal tangent line? So if you're watching at home, pause the video, give it a go, and then we'll discuss it. For you guys here, what does horizontal tangent line mean? Derivative equals 0. Okay. So horizontal, slope equals 0. Tangent line, we're talking about derivative. So we mean where is the derivative equal to 0? All right, well, we need to take a derivative. So this is new, derivative of tangent. We did that just yesterday. That's one of the ones you just have to know. The derivative of tangent is secant squared. So 3 secant squared x. And the derivative of minus 4x would be minus 4. And so there's sort of the first half of the problem. The rest of this problem is algebra and trig. We've done the calculus part. So let's set this equal to 0. Move the 4 over and divide by 3. So secant squared x equals 4/3. Except I don't really want to mess with secant. Who's secant's reciprocal partner? Who's he paired with? Cosine. So let's don't do a secant problem. Let's do a cosine problem. So 1 over cosine squared x equals 4/3. And then I could flip this over, or flip both sides over. Cosine squared x equals 3/4. Square root both sides. Cosine of x equals root 3 over 2. Oh, that looks familiar. And because we put the square roots on, we got to remember the plus or minus thing. A little extra layer of complication to the problem there. So cosine is plus or minus root 3 over 2. I got to draw a picture to think about that. Let's see, cosine is the x-coordinate. Root 3 over 2 is the long side. So I want to find the angles whose x-coordinate is the long side. So that would be all the shallow angles. And since plus or minus doesn't matter, I don't have to worry about that so much. So just all the over 6s. So pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. I guess I probably should have said limit your answer to be between 0 and 2 pi, because there's more than this, right? Because you can go around 14 times and then pi over 6, or you can go backwards a bunch of times. So yeah, a test would specify where we want our answers so that we don't spend all day trying to list out answers. Like most of the test questions, like all of the AP questions, this thing tests multiple things at once. Right? You had to know what horizontal tangent line meant. Then you had to take a derivative of a couple of things. Then there was some algebra, and then there was some trig. So this is an AP type question that tests more than one thing. It doesn't just say, hey, find the derivative of this guy. I mean, that was sort of the key calculus concept in there. But it forced you to think, okay, I need to find the derivative, then find the derivative, and then do some other stuff with it. Questions on that one? All right, number 2. Find instantaneous rate of change of f of x at x equals 0 if f of x equals that thing. So if you're at home, pause it and give it a try, and then come back and see how you do. All right, instantaneous rate of change. So rate of change, that's slope. I really wish we'd use that phrase, starting in Algebra 1, and maybe we do, but we don't use it very often. Just lock that into your brain that rate of change means slope. And in here, slope usually means derivative, especially if we're talking about instantaneous. So that would mean like at a point. So at one point, we're not really allowed to use the slope formula because you need 2 points for that. You've got to use your calculus derivative. calculus slope, which means derivative. So instantaneous rate of change means derivative, and like you guys said earlier, average rate of change, that would mean just the good old slope formula. So that's a separate problem, but that's average versus instantaneous rate of change. I use both of those terms on the test, so make sure you understand they both mean slope, but they're not exactly the same. One's algebra slope, one's calculus slope. Okay, so derivative of f of x at x equals 0. So that's a lot of words. To really what this thing's asking is find f prime of 0. Again, this is AP test-like here, where it doesn't just say find f prime of 0, it uses words to get you to do what it wants to do. So let's find the derivative, and then we'll plug in 0. Okay, well, right off the bat, we've got a Tootsie Roll problem here. So there's multiple layers to this. And what I started doing yesterday was sort of labeling the pieces of what comes first. What's the outermost layer of this function? What's that? Thought somebody said it. The cosine. So we'll handle cosine first. That's the wrapper to our Tootsie Roll on this one. And then the inside is this 2x squared, so we'll handle that second. And then unfortunate but sometimes common mistake is to handle the chain rule correctly and then forget about the rest of the stuff, because you get so invested and involved in solving this that you forget about the rest of this. So that's just kind of mental note. Don't forget this while we're doing chain rule. So derivative of cosine is negative sine. But the big deal and the point of the Tootsie Roll Pops is that you can only do one layer at a time, right? Nobody took the Tootsie Roll Pop and just bit into it. So last year, you guys weren't here when I taught this. I don't know if I said this on the video or if you saw it, but last year I taught this in a little different order, and I had the kid that literally, like, to prove me wrong, just stuck the thing in his mouth, wrapper and all, crunched into it, and just got after it just to make a point. That was gross. That's not how you eat a Tootsie Roll Pop. More importantly, it's not how you do the chain roll. You got to go one step at a time. So the equivalent of eating it all at once would be putting 4x right here, because the derivative of 2x squared is 4x. That's true, but that's biting everything at once. One step at a time. So 2x squared stays in there, and then we'll chain that, hence the name chain rule, to its derivative, which would be 4x. So one step at a time, one bite at a time. Do all the derivatives, but don't do them all at once. And then, like I said, almost forgot to go back and do this. Derivative of 3x is 3. Derivative of minus pi. What's the derivative of minus pi? 0. Why is it 0? There's no x's. That's a good answer. A more technical answer, I mean, that's a great answer, but a more technical answer would be that it's a constant, and derivatives of constant is 0. So that had a little bit of chain rule, a little bit of trig, a little bit of power rule, another power rule, and the constant rule, all thrown into one problem. As happens a lot, we need to go back and read and make sure we answer the question. Find instantaneous rate of change. Oh, at x equals 0. We hadn't done that part yet. So there's our instantaneous rate of change. Might want to clean that up a little bit. I don't guess you'd have to clean it up because you're going to be plugging in 0 anyway. Just to move things around so it looks prettier. And so at 0, negative 4 times 0, which means the rest of this doesn't really matter. Sine of 0, that's also 0. Plus 3, though. So our answer to all of that is 3. You were right?
I did it wrong, but I was right.
That's on me to make sure I grade test carefully, because sometimes, yeah. or right question such that the common mistakes don't lead to the right answer.
Yeah, I guess the bit into it is about right.
Oh, that one would be
Yeah.
if you messed up the chain rule, you'd probably still get 0 for all that, and as long as you got the 3, you'd still be okay. And would I grade your test close enough to see that? Maybe. Maybe not, though.